The email arrived at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mandatory family meeting. Sunday 2 p.m. Dad's office building. Business transition and property allocation. Attendance required. Mom. I stared at my laptop screen reading the message twice. Property allocation? I took a sip of coffee and forwarded the email to my attorney with a simple note. This should be interesting. 4 days later, I walked into the third-floor conference room of the Harrison Building, the same mid-rise office building in downtown Boston where my father had run his consulting firm for 32 years. My brother Marcus was already holding court at the head of the table. As I was saying, it's time for a new generation to take control. This building represents our family legacy and I'm claiming it as mine. I set my bag down quietly and took a seat near the back. Marcus didn't even glance at me. She can't stop me. Dad always intended for me to have it. I pulled out my phone and checked my emails. Quarterly revenue reports from my CFO. Meeting confirmation for Thursday. Nothing urgent. Then Leonard Fitzgerald, the building's property manager for 12 years, stood up from his chair near the door. His face had gone pale. Mr. Harrison, I'm sorry, but there's been a significant misunderstanding. Your sister, Ms. Alexis Harrison, has owned this property for 5 years. The papers Marcus was holding, copies of Dad's old business documents, slipped from his hands and scattered across the conference table. Mom's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Dad's mouth opened but no sound came out. Marcus stared at Leonard like he'd spoken in a foreign language. What did you just say? My name is Alexis Harrison. I'm 32 years old and I've been invisible in my family for as long as I can remember. Not ignored. Worse than that. Acknowledged just enough to be compared unfavorably to my older brother at every opportunity. Marcus was the golden child. 4 years older than me, tall, charismatic, the kind of person who commanded attention when he walked into a room. Dad used to say Marcus had executive presence. By the time Marcus was 16, Dad was already grooming him to take over the family consulting business. I was the smart one. Which sounds like a compliment until you realize it was code for good with numbers but lacks leadership qualities. The first memory that defined my place in the family happened when I was 11 years old. It was career day at school. Parents were supposed to come talk about their jobs. Dad came for Marcus's class when Marcus was in 8th grade. Brought props, gave a whole presentation about business strategy, made it engaging and fun. When my career day came 3 years later, I asked if Dad would come. Honey, I'm swamped that week, he said, barely looking up from his laptop. Besides, Marcus is pitching for the baseball championship that same day. Mom and I need to be there. But you came for Marcus's career day. That was different. Marcus asked months in advance. You're giving me 3 days' notice. He finally looked at me. You're smart, Alexis. You'll figure something out. I ended up bringing my math teacher instead. She was nice about it. But I sat through presentations from lawyers, doctors, engineers, architects, all the other kids' parents, and felt the absence of mine like a physical weight. Marcus's baseball team lost that day. Dad still said it was worth going. The second defining memory came when I was 17. I'd been accepted to MIT with a full scholarship, full ride, everything paid for. It was one of the most competitive programs in the country. Only 3% acceptance rate. I was so excited. I printed out the acceptance letter and brought it to family dinner. MIT accepted me. Full scholarship. I'm going to study computer science and economics. Mom smiled. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Dad nodded. That's a good school. Then Marcus, who was 21 and finishing up at Boston University, said, I got the junior analyst position at Whitmore and Associates. 75 grand starting salary. The energy in the room shifted immediately. Marcus, that's incredible. Dad stood up and hugged him. Whitmore is top tier. This is exactly the experience you need. I knew you'd get it, Mom said, beaming. You interviewed so well. They spent the next 45 minutes talking about Marcus's new job, the benefits package, the career trajectory, the networking opportunities. My MIT acceptance letter stayed on the table. No one mentioned it again. The third memory, the one that changed everything, happened when I was 24. I'd been working for 3 years since graduating MIT. I'd started at a tech consulting firm, moved to a fintech startup, and had just been promoted to director of strategy. I was making $180,000 a year, had equity in the company, and was being headhunted by larger firms. I went to Sunday dinner at my parents' house, excited to share the news about my promotion. Marcus was there with his fiancée, Diane. He'd been working at Dad's firm for 3 years, holding the title of Vice President of Business Development, a title Dad had created specifically for him. "I have news," I said as we sat down. "I got promoted to Director of Strategy. Comes with equity and—" "That's nice," Dad interrupted. "Marcus, tell everyone about the Henderson deal." Marcus launched into a story about closing a $2 million consulting contract. It was impressive, I'll admit. Dad's firm had been struggling, and a deal that size was significant. But it wasn't my story. And I'd been cut off mid-sentence to hear it. I tried again later. "The equity package is really generous. If the company IPOs like we're projecting—" "Alexis, not everyone understands tech stock options," Mom said in that tone. That gentle, patronizing tone that implied I was being difficult. "Let's talk about something we can all relate to." I stopped trying after that. Instead, I started building. Quietly. Deliberately. Without telling any of them. I took the equity from my fintech job and exercised my options early. When the company went public 18 months later, my $15,000 investment became $2.8 million. I used that as seed capital. Started investing in real estate. Small properties at first, then larger ones. Bought distressed commercial buildings, renovated them, leased them to businesses at market rate. Built a portfolio. I also started consulting independently. My expertise in financial strategy and tech implementation was valuable, and word spread quickly. Within 2 years, I had a roster of 12 corporate clients paying between $25,000 and $50,000 per month for my services. I formed Harrison Strategic Holdings, an LLC that held all my real estate assets. Separate from my consulting work. Separate from my family name despite sharing the surname. And 5 years ago, when I was 27, an opportunity appeared that I couldn't resist. Dad's office building, the Harrison Building, went up for sale. Dad didn't own it. He'd never owned it. He'd leased the 3rd floor for his consulting firm for 32 years, but the building itself belonged to the Pemberton family. Old Boston money. They'd owned commercial real estate throughout the city for 3 generations. But the youngest Pemberton, Christopher, who'd inherited the portfolio, was a disaster. Bad investments, expensive divorce, mounting debt. He needed cash immediately and was quietly selling off properties. My commercial real estate broker called me. "Alex, there's a building in downtown Boston coming on the market. Off-market sale, needs to move fast. The Pemberton Building on Tremont Street. 7 stories, 92% occupied, strong tenant history. Asking $8.5 million. Send me the details." I reviewed the financials that night. The building generated $940,000 annually in rental income. Operating expenses and taxes ran about $380,000. Net operating income of $560,000 per year on an $8.5 million purchase meant a 6.6% cap rate. Decent for downtown Boston. But there was another factor. Dad's firm, Harrison Consulting Group, occupied the entire 3rd floor. They paid $14,500 per month, or $174,000 annually. Their lease was up for renewal in 18 months. I did the math. If I bought the building, I'd be Dad's landlord. He wouldn't know it. The ownership would be through my LLC, but I'd effectively control whether his business could stay in the building that bore our family name. It felt like justice. Poetic justice. I made an offer, $8.2 million all cash, 30-day close. Christopher Pemberton accepted immediately. I funded the purchase through a combination of my own capital, $3.1 million, a commercial loan, $4.5 million at 4.2% interest, and a small investment from 2 partners, $600,000 total. The loan was structured conservatively, easily covered by the rental income with room to spare. The sale closed on September 15, 5 years ago. I became the owner of a 7-story office building in downtown Boston, including the floor where my father's company operated. Dad never knew. I'd kept the building management company that the Pembertons had used, Fitzgerald Property Management. Leonard Fitzgerald had been managing the building for years. I met with him after the sale closed and was direct. I want to improve the property, I told him. Update the common areas, improve building systems, maintain high occupancy. I'll invest in capital improvements, but I expect professional management in return. Of course, Ms. Harrison. May I ask, the Harrison Consulting Group on the third floor, are they related to you? They're my father's company. Leonard's eyes widened slightly. Does he know you're the new owner? No. And I'd prefer to keep it that way. All correspondence should come from Fitzgerald Property Management. My LLC's ownership is a matter of public record if anyone checks, but I'm not volunteering the information. Understood. Over the next 5 years, I invested $1.2 million in building improvements. New HVAC system. Lobby renovation. Elevator modernization. Updated security. The building's value increased to approximately $11.3 million. My equity position was now worth roughly $6.8 million. Dad's firm renewed their lease twice during that period. Each time Leonard handled the negotiations. Each time I approved fair market rates, not discounts but not price gouging either. Professional and appropriate. And each time at family dinners, Dad would complain about the new building owners, making him pay higher rent. Used to be the Pembertons, he'd say. They understood legacy tenants. Now it's some investment group. All they care about is money. I'd nod sympathetically and say nothing. Marcus, who'd been promoted to president of Harrison Consulting Group 2 years ago when Dad semi-retired, would chime in. We should look at other locations. This building isn't special. We could probably find cheaper space in the seaport. But they never moved. Because despite the complaints, the Harrison building was perfectly located, well-maintained, and had their family name on it. The prestige mattered to them. Last month Dad had a health scare. Minor stroke, full recovery expected, but it scared him. At 71 he started talking seriously about retirement and succession planning. And that's when Marcus made his move. The email from Mom arrived on Tuesday morning. Mandatory family meeting. Sunday afternoon. The Harrison building. I knew immediately what this was about. Marcus was making his play. I called my attorney Rebecca Chin and gave her a heads up. Family meeting Sunday. I think my brother is going to try to claim ownership of the building. You should probably be available by phone. Do they know you own it? Not a clue. This should be interesting. That's what I said. Sunday arrived cold and clear. I dressed casually, dark jeans, cashmere sweater, simple boots. Drove my Audi Q5 to the building and parked in my designated owner's spot in the garage. The spot had my LLC's name on it, not my personal name. I'd never used it when coming to family dinners at Dad's office. I took the elevator to the third floor. The Harrison Consulting Group occupied a suite of offices with a conference room overlooking Tremont Street. It was a nice space. I'd approved the upgrades to the flooring and lighting 2 years ago. When I walked in, the conference room was already full. Dad sat at one end of the table looking older than I remembered. The stroke had aged him. Mom sat beside him, her expression unreadable. Marcus stood at the opposite end of the table like he was running a board meeting. His wife Diane sat to his right. My uncle Robert, Dad's younger brother, was there along with Aunt Patricia. A few cousins I barely spoke to. And Leonard Fitzgerald, the property manager, standing near the door with a folder under his arm. He met my eyes briefly and gave a tiny nod. Alexis, you're late. Marcus didn't wait for me to sit. We're discussing the future of the family business and associated assets. The email said 2 o'clock. It's 1:58. I took a seat near the back. Whatever. Let's get started. Marcus positioned himself like a CEO addressing shareholders. As everyone knows, Dad's health situation has forced us to think about succession planning. Harrison Consulting Group needs strong leadership for the next generation. Dad nodded slowly. Marcus has been doing excellent work as president. He's grown the client base, improved margins, modernized our approach. Thank you, Dad. Marcus smiled. But running the company is only part of the picture. We also need to think about the physical assets. This building represents our family legacy. Dad's name is on it. His business has been here for 32 years. We lease this floor, I said quietly. We don't own the building. Marcus shot me an annoyed look. I'm aware of that, Alexis. Thank you for the property law lesson. A few people chuckled. I stayed quiet. As I was saying, Marcus continued, the building ownership has been unclear since the Pembertons sold it 5 years ago. It's held by some investment LLC, Harrison Strategic Holdings. No one seems to know who actually owns it. Leonard Fitzgerald shifted uncomfortably near the door. But here's what I've discovered. Marcus pulled out a stack of papers. The building is available for purchase. I've been in contact with a commercial broker. The current owners are willing to sell for the right price, $12.5 million. That was news to me. No broker had contacted Leonard about any sale. $12.5 million, Uncle Robert whistled. That's steep. It's an investment, Marcus said. But more than that, it's our legacy. The Harrison building should be owned by the Harrison family. So I've put together a proposal. He passed documents around the table. I'll purchase the building through a partnership structure. Family members can invest if they want, but I'll hold majority ownership and operational control. I flipped through the document he'd handed me. It was surprisingly detailed. Financial projections, ownership percentages, management structure. He'd put real work into this. Once I control the building, Marcus continued, we'll expand Harrison Consulting Group. Take over additional floors. Maybe rebrand the entire building. Turn it into the Harrison Business Center. A real family legacy. Mom was nodding. That sounds wonderful, Marcus. It's ambitious, Dad said. But Marcus has always been ambitious. There's just one small obstacle, Marcus said, and his eyes finally landed on me. The current ownership structure is unclear. But I've been assured by my broker that Harrison Strategic Holdings is willing to sell. They're just an investment group. They don't have any emotional attachment to the property. Who told you they're willing to sell? I asked. My commercial broker. He's been in contact with their representatives. Which broker? James Sullivan at Boston Commercial Properties. Why? I made a mental note to call James Sullivan and ask why he was representing a sale that didn't exist. Once the purchase goes through, Marcus continued, not waiting for my response, the Harrison building will finally belong to the Harrison family, where it should have been all along. Hear, hear, Uncle Robert said. Marcus smiled, spreading his arms. So that's the plan. I'm claiming this building as mine. Well, the family's, but under my management. Any questions? I have one, I said. Have you actually spoken to the current owners? Or just to a broker who says he can arrange a sale? Marcus frowned. The broker is handling the negotiations. That's his job. But you don't know for sure that Harrison Strategic Holdings wants to sell? Why wouldn't they? Every property is for sale at the right price. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Rebecca. Call me in 3 minutes. Make it look official. Look, Marcus said, his patience thinning. I don't expect you to understand the complexities of commercial real estate transactions, Alexis. This is business. Strategic asset acquisition. It's above your pay grade. Is it? I kept my voice mild. Let's be realistic. You work in tech consulting. That's fine. It's a good career for you. But this is about legacy. Family legacy. Dad built something meaningful here and I'm going to preserve it. You can be part of the investment group if you want, but this is my project. My vision. She can't stop me. My phone buzzed. Rebecca calling right on time. Excuse me, I said, standing. I need to take this. I walked to the corner of the room. Rebecca, hi. Yes, I'm at the meeting now. I kept my voice low but not so low that the room couldn't hear me. No, he doesn't know yet. Should I tell him now or let Leonard handle it? Yes. I'll keep you posted. I hung up and turned back to the room. Everyone was staring at me. Sorry, I said. My attorney. Just wanted to confirm some details. Your attorney? Marcus's expression was confused. Why would you need an attorney for this meeting? Before I could answer, Leonard Fitzgerald cleared his throat. He looked at me and I nodded. He stepped forward, his face pale. Mr. Harrison, Marcus, I'm very sorry, but there's been a significant misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? Marcus's voice had an edge to it now. Leonard looked down at the folder in his hands, then back up at Marcus. Sir, the building isn't for sale. It never has been. I don't know who your broker spoke to, but it wasn't anyone authorized to represent the ownership. That's impossible. James Sullivan is one of the top commercial brokers in Boston. I'm sure he is, sir. But Harrison Strategic Holdings has not authorized any sale discussions. In fact, I can tell you with absolute certainty that the owner has no interest in selling. Not at any price. Marcus's face reddened. Then I'll increase my offer. 13 million. 14 million. Name the price. It's not about price, sir. Everything is about price in commercial real estate. Not this property. Dad leaned forward. Leonard, who are we dealing with here? Can you put us in contact with the ownership? Maybe we can work something out directly. Leonard hesitated, glancing at me again. It's fine, I said quietly. Tell them. What no one in that room knew, except Leonard and now Rebecca, was exactly how successful I'd become over the past 8 years. After selling my first company stock for $2.8 million, I hadn't just invested in one building. I'd built a portfolio. Harrison Strategic Holdings currently own 12 commercial properties across Boston and Cambridge. Total portfolio value, approximately $94 million. My personal equity position, approximately $38 million, though the exact number fluctuated with property valuations. The Harrison building was the smallest property in my portfolio in terms of value, but it was the most symbolic. I also still ran my consulting practice. 18 corporate clients now, paying between $30,000 and $75,000 monthly. Annual consulting revenue, approximately $8.4 million. After expenses and taxes, I cleared about $5.1 million per year from consulting alone. Between real estate income and consulting fees, my total annual income was approximately $10.7 million. My net worth, after all debts, was somewhere around $47 million, though I'd stopped calculating exactly. Numbers above a certain threshold stop feeling real. I'd built all of this quietly, carefully, without fanfare or family involvement. My friends knew. My business partners knew. The companies I consulted for certainly knew. I'd negotiated my rates based on the value I delivered and they paid willingly. But my family? They still thought I was doing well with my little tech consulting thing. I'd let them think that. Because their dismissal had cut so deep that I didn't want to share my success with people who wouldn't value it. Who'd find some way to diminish it or take credit for it. And because part of me, the petty hurt part, wanted to see how far they'd go. How much they'd assume. How badly they'd underestimate me. Now I was about to find out. Leonard Fitzgerald opened his folder and pulled out a single document. Mr. Harrison, the owner of Harrison Strategic Holdings, LLC is. He paused, his face pale. Your sister, Alexis Harrison. The silence that fell over the conference room was absolute. The papers Marcus was holding, his grand business plan for acquiring the building, slipped from his hands. They fluttered down onto the conference table, pages separating and scattering. Mom's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. He stared at me, then at Leonard, then back at me. Dad's mouth opened but no sound came out. His eyes were wide, confused, like Leonard had just spoken in a language he didn't understand. What? Marcus's voice came out strangled. What did you just say? Leonard kept his composure, though I could see his hands trembling slightly. Ms. Alexis Harrison purchased this building 5 years ago through Harrison Strategic Holdings, LLC. She's the sole owner. She has been your landlord for your entire tenure as president of Harrison Consulting Group. That's, Marcus started, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. That's impossible. I have the deed right here, sir. Leonard pulled out another document and set it on the table. Recorded with the Suffolk County Registry of Deeds on September 15, 5 years ago. Purchase price $8.2 million. Current estimated value $11.3 million. Uncle Robert leaned forward to look at the document. His face went pale. Jesus Christ. Real. Her name is right there. Marcus grabbed the deed, scanning it frantically. I watched his face cycle through emotions, confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally a kind of numb horror. You bought this building? His voice was barely a whisper. 5 years ago? Yes. I kept my voice calm and even. How? You're a consultant. You don't have. He stopped, clearly doing math in his head. Math that wasn't adding up. She doesn't have this kind of money, Diane said, Marcus's wife, her voice sharp. This is some kind of mistake. It's not a mistake, Leonard said firmly. Ms. Harrison owns this building outright. Well, she has a commercial mortgage, but the equity position is entirely hers. She's been an excellent owner. Very hands-on, very professional. The new owners, Dad said slowly, his face going from pale to red. The ones I've been complaining about. The ones who raised our rent. That was you. I approved market rate increases, yes. The same increases that every other tenant in the building received. Fair and appropriate for downtown Boston. But why wouldn't you tell us? Mom's voice was small, hurt. Would you have listened? I met her eyes. Would any of you have believed me? Silence. Marcus was still staring at the deed. $11 million. This building is worth $11 million. 11.3 according to the most recent appraisal, I said. Though valuations can fluctuate based on market conditions and comparable sales. How do you have $11 million? Marcus's voice rose. You're a tech consultant. I'm a financial strategy consultant specializing in tech implementation and digital transformation. I have 18 corporate clients. I charge between $30,000 and $75,000 per month per client, depending on scope. My consulting practice generates approximately $8.4 million annually in revenue. The room went silent again. Aunt Patricia broke the silence with a shocked laugh. $8 million? Per year. Revenue, yes. Net income after expenses is about $5.1 million annually. That's not possible, Marcus said. But his voice had lost its certainty. It's very possible. I'm good at what I do. Companies pay for expertise. Dad was calculating something on his fingers. $5 million a year. For 8 years. That's $40 million. Not quite. I started smaller. But yes, accumulated consulting income is significant. I also invested early in several properties. I pulled out my phone and opened a document. Would you like to see the portfolio? No one answered, but no one looked away. Harrison Strategic Holdings owns 12 commercial properties. Total value approximately $94 million. My equity position is approximately $38 million. This building represents about 12% of the portfolio. 12 properties, Uncle Robert repeated. $94 million. Commercial real estate in Boston and Cambridge. Office buildings mostly. Some retail. All professionally managed. All cash flowing positively. Marcus was shaking his head. This doesn't make sense. We would have known. Someone would have told us. Why would they? I keep my business private. I file my taxes, maintain proper corporate structures, work with reputable attorneys and accountants. But I don't advertise. Your father works in this building. Mom's voice was rising now. You let him pay rent to you without telling him? I let him pay market rent to his landlord, yes. The same rent structure he would have paid to anyone else. That's... Mom couldn't finish the sentence. Professional. I offered. Appropriate? Fair. Diane was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Marcus said you were working at some startup. Making like good money but nothing crazy. I've never worked at a startup. I started my own consulting practice 8 years ago. I thought Marcus knew that. You said you were doing tech consulting, Marcus said weakly. You made it sound small. I said I was a tech consultant. Which is true. I never said it was small. You assumed. Dad finally found his voice. Why, Alexis? Why hide all this from us? I looked at him, really looked at him. At his confused face, his hurt expression, his complete lack of self-awareness. Do you remember my MIT acceptance letter? I asked quietly. What? When I was 17, I got into MIT with a full scholarship. I brought the acceptance letter to family dinner. Do you remember what happened? Dad looked confused. Went to MIT. I remember that. Marcus announced his job offer at Whitmore and Associates the same night. You spent 45 minutes talking about his career. No one mentioned my acceptance again. I'm sure You didn't. I checked. I actually kept a journal back then. You never mentioned it. Not once. The room was very quiet now. When I graduated MIT, you didn't come to the ceremony. You said it was too far, too expensive, too complicated. But you'd flown to Amsterdam for Marcus's bachelor party 6 months earlier. That's not, Dad started. When I was 24, I tried to tell you about my promotion to Director of Strategy. You cut me off mid-sentence to hear about Marcus's consulting deal. Marcus's face had gone from red to pale. Alexis, I didn't mean. I know you didn't mean it. That's the problem. None of you meant to dismiss me. You just did. Consistently. For years. So eventually I stopped sharing. Leonard Fitzgerald cleared his throat softly. Miss Harrison, would you like me to leave? This seems like a family matter now. No, Leonard. Stay. You're the property manager. You should be here for this. I turned back to Marcus. You said this building represents family legacy. You said the Harrison building should be owned by the Harrison family. You were right. It should be. And it is. Just not by the Harrison family member you expected. Marcus's hands were trembling. The papers from his business plan lay scattered across the table. A proposal to buy a building he could never own because his little sister already owned it. The irony, I continued, my voice still calm, is that I've been a good landlord to you. Fair rates. Building improvements. Professional management. If I'd been anyone else, you'd probably be praising the ownership. But because it's me you feel, what? Embarrassed? Angry? Shocked, Dad said quietly. I'm shocked, Alexis. Why? Because I'm successful? Or because you never bothered to notice? No one had an answer to that. Uncle Robert was rereading the deed. She bought this 5 years ago. You've been paying rent to your little sister for 5 years and you never knew. Marcus made a choking sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. So to answer your question from earlier, I said, meeting Marcus's eyes, yes. I can stop you. You can't claim this building as yours because it's already mine. It has been for 5 years. And it's not for sale. Not for any price? Dad asked. Not for any price. The immediate consequences started before anyone even left the conference room. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need air. I can't, I need air. He walked out. Diane followed, throwing me a look I couldn't quite read. Shock? Anger? Respect? Maybe all three. Mom was crying softly. Alexis, how could you not tell us? How could you not ask? I kept my voice gentle but firm. In 8 years, did you ever once ask me about my business? My clients? My income? My life? She opened her mouth, then closed it. You didn't. Because you weren't interested. You assumed I was doing fine. Good enough but nothing special. And that was enough for you. Dad was still staring at the deed. $38 million in real estate equity. $5 million a year in consulting income. Jesus, Alexis. Plus investment portfolios, retirement accounts, and other assets. But yes, those are the primary income sources. Leonard Fitzgerald spoke up quietly. If I may, Miss Harrison. Both of you, the lease renewal for Harrison Consulting Group is coming up in 7 months. We should discuss terms. Marcus, who had just reached the door, stopped dead. Turned around slowly. What? Your lease expires in July. Standard commercial lease, 3-year term. We'll need to begin renewal negotiations soon. The color drained from Marcus's face. You're saying, if she doesn't renew our lease, we'd have to leave? That's typically how commercial leases work, yes, sir. She wouldn't. Marcus looked at me. You wouldn't do that to Dad's business. I haven't decided what I'm doing, I said honestly. That's 7 months away. We have time to discuss it. Discuss it. Marcus's voice rose. What's there to discuss? This is our office. Dad's been here for 32 years. As a tenant. With a lease. That expires. That's how commercial real estate works, Marcus. I thought you understood these things. The irony of using his own words against him wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Dad stood up slowly. Alexis, please. This business is my life's work. You can't just. I'm not just anything, Dad. I'm telling you that we have 7 months to figure this out. Whether Harrison Consulting Group stays in this building depends on a lot of factors. Market rates. Tenant history. Future building plans. We'll work with Leonard to come to an arrangement that makes sense. An arrangement that makes sense? Dad's voice broke. I'm your father. Then maybe you should have treated me like your daughter instead of an afterthought. The words hung in the air. Too harsh. Too honest. But true. Mom was crying harder now. Aunt Patricia looked stricken. Uncle Robert was still studying the deed like it might change if he read it enough times. I think this meeting is over, I said quietly. Leonard, thank you for clarifying the ownership situation. Can you send me the lease renewal timeline? I'll review it this week. Of course, Ms. Harrison. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. As I passed Marcus, he grabbed my arm. Alexis, wait. We need to talk about this. We will. But not today. Today you need to process this. We all do. You let me make a fool of myself. His voice was low, angry. You sat there and let me give a whole presentation about buying a building you already own. You humiliated me. No, Marcus. You humiliated yourself by assuming. By not doing basic research. By dismissing me so completely that you never considered I might be the owner. How was I supposed to know? You could have asked. At any point in the last 5 years, you could have asked about my business. My success. My life. But you didn't. Because you weren't interested in knowing anything about me unless it confirmed your existing beliefs. He let go of my arm. Step back. I don't know you at all, do I? No, I said softly. You really don't. The escalating consequences came over the next 2 weeks. The news spread through the family like wildfire. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly calling, asking if the rumors were true. Did I really own a $94 million real estate portfolio? Was I really making millions per year? My phone became unusable. I had to change my number. Marcus sent 17 emails in the first 3 days. The tone progressed from angry to desperate to apologetic to angry again. I responded to none of them. Mom came to my apartment unannounced on a Thursday evening. The doorman called up and I almost said no. But something made me let her come up. She stood in my entryway looking around at the space I'd lived in for 3 years. Modern furniture. Original artwork. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the harbor. How much did this apartment cost? She asked. $3.2 million. I paid cash. She made a small sound. Not quite a gasp, not quite a sob. Mom, why are you here? I want to understand. She turned to face me. Help me understand how this happened. How we got here. You got here by ignoring me for 3 decades. I got here by building something meaningful while you weren't paying attention. That's not fair. Isn't it? Name one major accomplishment of mine from the last 10 years. Just one. Without looking it up. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Struggled. Finally whispered, I can't. I graduated MIT with a double major. You didn't come to the ceremony. I sold my first company for millions. You told me not to be gauche about money. I started my own consulting firm. You've never asked about it. I bought 12 commercial properties. You never noticed. I built a life, Mom. A really good life. And you missed all of it because you were too focused on Marcus. We raised you both the same. You absolutely did not. And the fact that you believe that is part of the problem. She left 20 minutes later, crying. I felt terrible. But I also felt free. The final consequences crystallized when Dad's accountant called me. Ms. Harrison? This is Gerald Pemberton. I handle the books for Harrison Consulting Group. Your father asked me to reach out. About what? The lease renewal. He asked me to review the financials and determine what the company can afford in terms of rent increases. Okay. I'm afraid the news isn't good. Harrison Consulting Group is struggling financially. Has been for 2 years. Revenue is down 42% from its peak. The company is carrying significant debt. If rent increases substantially, they might not be able to afford to stay in the building. I felt my stomach drop. How bad is it? Bad enough that I've recommended they consider bankruptcy protection if things don't improve in the next 12 months. Dad's business, his life's work, was failing. And I'd had no idea. Why didn't he tell anyone? Pride, I imagine. He's been trying to turn it around. Marcus's efforts as president haven't helped. Some questionable decisions, some expensive mistakes. But the industry has changed and frankly their consulting model is outdated. Does Marcus know how bad it is? I believe so, yes. Which might explain why he was so desperate to acquire the building. Asset ownership would have given them leverage. Options. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time staring out at the city. My father's business was failing. Marcus had been grasping at straws trying to save it. And I'd been so focused on my own hurt that I hadn't seen any of it. I called Rebecca, my attorney. I need to think through some options. Complex family situation involving a commercial lease renewal. How complex? My father's business is going bankrupt. My brother tried to buy the building out from under me without knowing I owned it, and I have 7 months to decide whether to renew their lease or watch my father's life's work collapse. That is complex. Yeah. I called a meeting with Dad and Marcus 3 weeks after the initial confrontation. My office this time. Neutral territory. They arrived together, both looking uncomfortable in their suits. Dad had aged more in 3 weeks. The stress was visible. "Thank you for coming," I said, gesturing to the chairs across from my desk. "We need to discuss the lease renewal and the future of your business." "Alexis, before you say anything," Marcus started. "Let me finish. Gerald Pemberton contacted me. I know about the financial situation. The revenue decline, the debt, the cash flow problems." Dad's face reddened. He had no right. He had every right. "I'm your landlord. It's reasonable for me to assess tenant financial stability before renewal negotiations. Are you going to evict us?" Marcus's voice was flat. Defeated. "No. I pulled out a document I'd spent 2 weeks preparing with Rebecca and my business advisors. But we need to restructure some things." I slid the document across the desk. "Here's my proposal. Harrison Consulting Group stays in the building. Lease renewal for 5 years at current rates. No increase for year 1, modest CPI adjustments after that." Dad and Marcus exchanged glances. "Why would you do that?" "Because despite everything, you're family. And because Dad built something real even if it's struggling now. But there are conditions." "What conditions?" Marcus asked warily. "First, you bring in a professional business consultant to restructure operations. I have recommendations. You implement their advice fully." "We don't need." "Yes, you do. Your business model is outdated. Your technology is behind. Your pricing is off. You need help. Take it or don't, but that's condition 1. Dad nodded slowly. "What else?" "Second, Marcus, you step down as president. You move to VP of Client Relations, which actually suits your skills better. Dad, you officially retire. We hire a professional CEO to run the company." Marcus's face flushed. "You want me to take a demotion?" "I want you to succeed at something you're actually good at. You're excellent with clients. You're personable, persuasive, good at relationship building. But you're not a good operational manager. The financial records prove it." He looked like he'd been slapped. But he didn't argue. "Third, the company needs capital. I'm willing to provide it, but not as a loan. I'll invest $2 million for a 30% equity stake. The company stays in family hands. You and Dad will still own the majority. But I'll have a seat on the board and input on major decisions." "You want to own part of Dad's company?" Marcus asked. "I want to save Dad's company. This is how we do it." The room was silent for a long moment. Dad spoke finally. "Why? After everything we did or didn't do, why would you help us?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the father who'd dismissed me but had also paid for my childhood home, my education, my foundation. Who'd made terrible mistakes but wasn't a terrible person. "Because you're my father. Because I don't want to watch you lose everything. And because maybe, we can build something better going forward." "Better how?" "Better as a family. Actually knowing each other. Actually showing up for each other. No more assumptions. No more dismissals. No more golden child and invisible child. We're both adults now. We can choose to do this differently." Marcus was reading the proposal carefully. "This is actually really fair. More than fair. It's business. Good business. The company has potential if it's managed correctly. I wouldn't invest otherwise." "And if we say no?" Dad asked. "Then I renew your lease at market rate, which will be approximately 42% higher than current rent, and you'll probably be bankrupt within a year. Then I'll lease the space to another tenant who can afford it. It's not personal. It's just business." I let that sink in. "But I'd prefer option 1, I added. "I'd prefer we figure this out together." Dad and Marcus looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. "Okay," Dad said quietly. "Let's try it." 6 months later, I was back in the conference room at the Harrison Building. But this time the energy was completely different. The new CEO, Patricia Rodriguez, was presenting Q2 results to the board. Revenue was up 18% from the previous quarter. Client retention had improved dramatically. The debt was being paid down aggressively. Dad sat at the table, officially retired but still attending board meetings as chairman emeritus. He looked healthier, happier. Marcus was running the client relations department and thriving. Turned out I was right, he was excellent at business development when he wasn't trying to also manage operations. He'd brought in 3 major new clients in 5 months. And I sat on the board as a 30% equity holder and active advisor. After the meeting, Dad pulled me aside. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes. We walked to his old office. Now Patricia's office, but she'd stepped out. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About MIT, about your graduation, about all the times we dismissed you. Dad. Let me finish. You were right. About all of it. We treated you terribly. Not because we meant to, but because we were so focused on Marcus that we couldn't see you. And that's inexcusable. I didn't say anything. I can't change the past. But I want you to know that I see you now. I see what you built. How hard you worked. How brilliant you are. And I'm proud of you. I should have said that 20 years ago, but I'm saying it now. Thank you, I said quietly. That means something. Does it mean enough? I don't know yet. We're still figuring this out. But it's a start. He nodded. A start is more than I deserve. That evening I drove back to my apartment. Marcus called as I was pulling into the garage. Hey, you got a minute? Sure. I just wanted to say, thank you. For the investment. For the restructuring. For not letting us fail. You're welcome. And I'm sorry. Really sorry. For everything. For how I treated you. For dismissing you. For assuming you were less successful because you weren't loud about it. I appreciate that. I talked to my therapist about it. About why I needed to be the golden child. Why I couldn't handle you being successful. He laughed awkwardly. Turns out I have some issues with self-worth that I was covering up with ego. Therapy is good. I've been in therapy for 6 years. Really? Yeah. It helps. Maybe we could, I don't know, get coffee sometime. Actually talk about real stuff. I thought about it. Maybe. Let's take it slow. Slow is good. I can do slow. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a few minutes, watching the city lights reflect off the harbor. My family was still broken in a lot of ways. We had years of damage to work through. Trust to rebuild. Patterns to change. But for the first time in my life they were actually trying. And that was something. I owned a $94 million real estate portfolio. I ran a successful consulting practice. I had built something meaningful without their help. But more importantly, I'd built it without losing myself. Without becoming bitter or cruel or closed off. I'd stayed true to who I was. Someone who worked hard, played fair, and didn't need anyone else's validation to know my worth. The building that bore my family name was mine. Not because I'd inherited it or been given it, but because I'd earned the money to buy it. And that made all the difference.